Welcome to the deep dive. We're really glad you're here with us today.
Absolutely.
Whether you're on a long commute right now or maybe tackling some mundane chore around the house or you just brought that insatiable curiosity of yours to the table, you're exactly where you need to be.
It's the perfect time to just kind of tune in and explore something new.
Right. And our mission today is a really ambitious one.
Oh yeah, it's a big one.
We are going to unpack this brilliant video essay by the YouTube channel Stories That Inspire.
Highly recommend checking it out, by the way.
For sure. The video is titled What the Matrix Ending Scene Actually Means.
And it really delivers on that title.
It does. And look, if you are anything like me, you are a learner. You're always hunting for that massive paradigm shift.
That light bulb moment.
Exactly, that sudden flash of insight that completely reframes how you view the world. But you probably want it without drowning in dense academic philosophical jargon, right?
Nobody wants a college lecture while they're doing the dishes.
Right. And by the time we wrap up this conversation, I genuinely believe you're going to experience exactly that shift. We are going to completely dismantle and rebuild one of the most fiercely debated movie endings in cinema history.
It really is this fascinating piece of cinematic history to re-examine. I mean, when a piece of media builds up a sprawling, complex mythology over years.
Like The Matrix did.
Right. The cultural expectation for how it should resolve becomes incredibly rigid. We're conditioned by decades of storytelling to expect a very specific type of resolution.
Especially in massive blockbusters.
Exactly.
And I have to confess something here, which actually mirrors an anecdote from the essay itself, and it hit me right between the eyes.
Oh, the theater experience.
Yes. Picture this. I'm a kid sitting in a packed theater for The Matrix Revolutions.
Sticky floors and all.
The floor is so sticky. I've got this massive tub of popcorn, and I am just buzzing with a very specific culturally ingrained expectation.
You wanted to fight.
I wanted them to fight. I wanted Neo to fly into the Machine City and just start tearing it apart.
Like a superhero movie.
Exactly.
Mm.
I wanted this epic, world-ending laser battle where the human resistance physically annihilates the machines.
You wanted the good guys to shoot their way to total victory.
Unapologetically, yes.
Hmm.
So when the ending actually unfolded the way it did,
With a truce.
with a quiet sacrifice and a truce, it didn't just confuse me, it felt almost like a betrayal of the action genre.
It felt anticlimactic to a lot of people,
It really did.
which is an entirely natural reaction. The essay points out that we are fundamentally trained to view victory exclusively through the lens of domination.
Right, the guy who hits hardest wins.
The prevailing narrative structure tells us the righteous side shoots faster and physically overcomes the oppressor. But to understand this story, we have to grapple with a profound central mystery.
And this anchors our entire discussion today.
Why didn't Neo just win the war by fighting?
How does a man with no physical eyes,
No weapons,
completely surrounded by enemies,
with absolutely zero mathematical chance of winning.
right, how does that guy manage to end a war that has raged for centuries?
It's the ultimate question.
How does the guy who can literally stop bullets in midair decide that his ultimate weapon is not fighting?
And what the essay reveals here is astonishing. The core thesis we're going to explore today is that the ending of the Matrix trilogy isn't a mistake.
It wasn't the Wachowskis getting lost in their own lore.
Not at all, or failing to stick the landing. It is the ultimate crowning thesis of their entire narrative.
Okay, lay it on us.
The real weapon that defeats hyper-rational, oppressive systems of control isn't a bigger gun. It's not better tactics.
It's not superior physical strength.
No, it is irrational, selfless sacrifice.
Irrational, selfless sacrifice. It requires a total paradigm shift to grasp.
It does. The central argument posits that love, sacrifice, and selflessness are not human weaknesses.
Which is exactly how the machines calculate them.
Right. They are, in fact, the only weapons that purely rational systems can never account for.
Because what truly alters the trajectory of history, inside the fictional matrix and in our own lived reality, are the selfless choices we make without expecting a single tangible reward.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand how Neo achieves this impossible victory by giving everything away, we can't start at the final battle in the rain.
No, we have to rewind.
We have to go back to where Neo's real philosophical journey fundamentally begins.
And that doesn't happen when he takes the red pill.
Or when he learns Kung Fu.
Or dodges bullets.
His true journey begins the moment he walks into that sterile, white room filled with television screens.
The moment he meets the architect.
Yes.
That scene in The Matrix Reloaded is infamous. It's often cited by critics as the exact moment the franchise became too convoluted.
like it was just this dense exposition dump that derailed all the action.
But if we look at it through the lens of this essay, it's the exact opposite.
It's the narrative literally pausing to explain its entire underlying philosophy.
The architect, this cold, calculating program, explains the matrix in a way that is existentially terrifying. He describes the matrix as a probability engine.
A probability engine. If you really sit with that phrase, it's chilling.
It changes everything.
It means the system isn't just a virtual reality video game. It implies that every single choice you think you're making freely,
Every spontaneous action.
every emotional outburst, every human variable, it hasn't just been observed.
It has been meticulously calculated, charted, predicted, and entirely accounted for by the system's algorithm.
Right. The system is designed to absorb human unpredictability and turn it into predictable data.
And in that room, the architect drops a bombshell that completely shatters Neo's understanding of his own existence.
He tells Neo, you are the eventuality of an anomaly.
He explains that despite his sincerest efforts to create a perfect mathematical harmony, human choice creates a remainder. An unbalanced equation.
What this means, fundamentally, is that Neo is not special, which is such a massive subversion of the chosen one trope. We, the audience, and you listening at home, we've spent 2 whole movies entirely invested in the idea that Neo is this unique, singular messiah.
We think he's a miraculous savior born of pure chance.
Destined to break the wheel. And the architect sits there in his tailored suit and essentially says, no, you're just the IT department's scheduled maintenance routine.
You're a built-in feature of the software.
It completely deconstructs the hero's journey.
It does. And then comes the truly disturbing revelation. The architect informs Neo that this conversation has happened before.
Neo is the 6th version of the One.
There have been 5 identical chosen ones before him, standing in that exact same room.
Faced with the exact same choice between 2 doors.
One door leads to the source, to reboot the Matrix and save humanity from total extinction.
And the other door leads back into the Matrix to save Trinity.
But that choice results in a catastrophic system failure and the death of every human being connected to it, plus the destruction of Zion.
But wait, if the Matrix is perfectly rational, why do the machines even allow this anomaly to exist? Why not just wipe out the humans and use a more compliant power source?
Like cows or geothermal energy.
Yeah, why go through this elaborate charade of the One?
That's where the systemic logic gets incredibly dark. The architect discovered that early, perfect versions of the Matrix failed.
Humans rejected them.
Because humans reject a reality where they don't have choice, even if that choice is occurring on a subconscious level.
So to make the humans accept the simulation, they had to be given the illusion of free will.
But giving humans choice inevitably leads to a small percentage of them, about 1% rejecting the programming entirely.
And if left unchecked, that 1% of rebels would crash the whole system.
Exactly. So the machines didn't just passively predict that humans would rebel.
They proactively designed the rebellion to control it.
It's brilliant and horrifying.
It's like a casino. The house knows that if nobody ever wins, people will stop playing and leave. So they designed the slot machines to pay out just enough to keep you sitting at the stool pulling the lever.
You get the illusion of a winning streak.
But the mathematical odds are completely locked. Zion, the prophecy, the entire human resistance, it's just the comped drinks the casino gives you to keep you playing a rigged game.
That is a perfect analogy. You give the prisoner the illusion that they are digging a secret tunnel to freedom?
When in reality, the prison architects designed that tunnel to loop right back into a holding cell.
And the physical labor of the prisoner digging that tunnel generates the exact kinetic energy the prison needs to keep the lights on.
The rebellion is harvested.
And what did those previous 5 chosen ones do when faced with the 2 doors?
They all made the exact same, highly predictable, utterly rational choice.
They chose the door that supposedly saves humanity.
They selected 23 people from the Matrix to rebuild Zion, rebooted the system, and let the cycle of control continue.
They chose the utilitarian outcome.
It's a brutal trolley problem. The previous 5 Neos all pulled the lever to save the many by sacrificing the few.
And the machines knew they would. They built hope directly into their code.
They created the prophecy of the One, specifically so that the humans who rejected the Matrix would have something to fight for.
Something to believe in.
Completely unaware that their belief was leading them right back to systemic compliance.
It is the ultimate form of psychological dominance. Pay attention to the architect's tone during this scene.
He doesn't sound angry.
Or threatened by Neo. He sounds profoundly bored. He says, "This will be the 6th time we have destroyed it, and we have become exceedingly efficient at it."
The sheer boredom is what makes him so terrifying. He's like a middle manager discussing a quarterly spreadsheet.
He's looking at the destruction of human lives as a rounding error.
And this is where we have to connect this machine logic to how real-world empires operate, because the parallels here are striking.
Real, historical empires don't waste their energy trying to violently crush every single micro-rebellion.
That's inefficient. It costs too much money and manpower.
Instead, they absorb them, they predict them, they turn resistance into a pressure release valve.
Exactly. Zion only exists because the matrix needs it to exist. It acts as a containment zone for the minds that reject the program.
The war continues endlessly because the system actually requires that perpetual conflict to maintain its own overall stability.
The horrific truth the narrative is presenting here is that freedom within the matrix
And arguably freedom within the rebellion.
is a total illusion.
Yeah.
The concept of freedom has been programmed into the code solely to make the condition of slavery bearable for the enslaved.
The system takes the deep, burning human desire for freedom and turns it into a structural pillar of the very system the humans are desperately trying to escape.
That is heavy. It means the machines have essentially won the game before Neo even walks into the room.
Because they rely entirely on game theory.
Game theory is the operative concept here. The machines have built their entire civilization on the assumption that every actor, when pushed to their absolute limit, will pursue maximum benefit at minimum cost.
The architect is standing there, monitoring the chemical precursors forming in Neo's brain.
He's watching the serotonin and adrenaline spike.
He knows that the utilitarian choice, sacrificing the woman he loves to ensure the survival of his entire species, is the only logical, rational move left on the board.
It's like playing Monopoly. The rules dictate that everyone acts in their own self-interest, trying to hoard property and bankrupt the other players.
And the machines are playing perfectly. They have all the hotels on Boardwalk and Park Place.
But what happens when a player suddenly decides to stop playing by those rules? What happens when a player starts handing all their cash to the other players for free?
The rules of the game simply don't have a mechanism to deal with that.
And this brings us to the exact moment where the entire system starts to fracture.
Neo does something completely unprecedented in the history of the probability engine.
He looks at the two doors. He looks at the irrefutable logic, the mathematical certainty of species-wide extinction if he disobeys.
And he chooses the left door. He chooses Trinity.
He chooses love over logic. He chooses one single person over the survival of humanity.
From a purely rational, systemic perspective, this is absolute madness.
It's the worst possible move on the chessboard. The architect even mocks him for it.
He dismisses human hope as the quintessential human delusion, calling it simultaneously the source of our greatest strength and our fatal flaw.
But here's where we have to ask a crucial question. What if the architect's analysis is flawed?
What if the machine's complete inability to understand hope and love isn't humanity's fatal flaw, but the machine's fatal blind spot?
But wait, if the machines understand human neurochemistry so well, if the architect can literally see the chemical reactions happening in Neo's brain, why can't they just calculate love?
Right.
Isn't love just oxytocin, dopamine, and evolutionary biology pushing us to mate and protect our tribe? Why does it break their math?
That is a fantastic question. The distinction lies between biological attachment and irrational self-sacrificial love.
Okay, break that down.
A machine can calculate biological attachment. A mother protecting a child to ensure the survival of her genes. That has a clear evolutionary payoff. It fits into game theory.
But Neo isn't choosing to save Trinity to propagate his genes.
Especially since doing so supposedly guarantees the death of the entire species, ending his genetic line anyway.
He is making a choice that yields negative utility for himself and his species.
Genuine, self-sacrificial love does not operate on game theory. You cannot mathematically predict an action that has absolutely no personal payoff.
A system built entirely on balancing equations of risk and reward literally cannot see an act of pure, irrational love coming.
Because to a computer, choosing to let your entire species die just to save one person doesn't compute.
It returns a syntax error.
Exactly. And this seemingly small, deeply personal, and arguably entirely selfish choice to save Trinity is the catalyst for everything that follows.
It is the glitch of irrational love that sets off a massive, totally unpredictable chain reaction that the system can no longer model or control.
To illustrate this glitch perfectly, we should look at a highly underappreciated scene from the Matrix Revolutions.
Yes, let's talk about the train station.
It represents a sort of digital purgatory between the Matrix and the Machine City.
Neo meets a program named Ramachandra, his wife Kamala, and their daughter Sati.
I have always been fascinated by that scene because Ramachandra is a program,
He's literally a piece of code. And yet he tells Neo that he loves his daughter.
and Neo is understandably confused. He asks, "You're a program. How can you love?"
To a program, everything is about purpose. If a program has no purpose, it is deleted.
Sati was created without a systemic purpose, meaning she is marked for deletion.
But Ramachandra recognizes something profound that the architect completely misses.
He understands that love isn't about utility or purpose. He asks Neo a very simple, devastating question about his connection to Trinity.
He asks, "Can you tell me what you would give to hold on to that connection?"
And Neo's answer is immediate. He doesn't hesitate. He says, anything.
Anything. That one word completely defies the probability engine.
If you are willing to give anything, including your own life, your own purpose, your own survival, then your actions are no longer bounded by the rules of the system.
You have stepped entirely outside the equation.
It's such a beautiful realization. And it's not just Neo. Trinity lives by this exact same irrational code.
She doesn't just operate on military strategy or tactical advantage. She operates on love.
She dives out of a skyscraper. She drives a motorcycle into oncoming traffic.
Love, at its core, makes you do things that are fundamentally irrational to a machine.
And this is where the genius of the narrative structure really begins to shine.
Because once Neo breaks that pattern in the architect's room, once he steps completely outside of the calculated equation,
He creates a cascading failure within the system's predictive models. He inspires a contagion of selflessness.
the story moves from focusing solely on the chosen one to tracking a series of specific, irrational sacrifices made by the supporting cast.
Right, the infection of selflessness spreads.
Let's really dive into these side characters because their choices are what actually dismantle the machine's logic on the ground level.
Let's start with Morpheus.
This is a man who has spent the entire trilogy defined by his absolute, unwavering, almost fanatical belief in the prophecy.
He believed in destiny. He believed the system had a predetermined end where the one would easily win the war.
But in Revolutions, his faith is completely shattered. The prophecy was a lie.
Neo is trapped in a coma-like state in a train station. Nothing is going according to the grand plan.
Logically, all hope is lost. The machines are drilling toward Zion, and they're going to arrive in a matter of hours.
By every rational metric, Morpheus should surrender or fall into despair. The mathematical probability of their survival has dropped to absolute zero.
The infrastructure of his entire belief system has collapsed.
So what does a man do when the prophecy he dedicated his life to turns out to be a machine control mechanism?
He pivots his faith. He stands before the Council of Zion, this battered, exhausted man, and he says, as long as there is a single breath in his body, he will not give up, and neither can we.
He stops believing in the grand systemic prophecy, and he chooses to simply believe in his friend.
That is faith without evidence. That is a selfless loyalty to a person when every single rational calculation screams that it is hopeless.
He is no longer fighting for a guaranteed victory. He is fighting out of pure loyalty.
And that cascade of irrationality continues with Niobe.
Niobe is such a crucial piece of this puzzle. She is established early on as a pragmatist.
She is a realist and experienced military captain.
She explicitly states earlier in the narrative that she does not believe in the prophecy of the One. She trusts what she can see and touch.
Exactly. Niobe operates on logic and tactical advantage.
Yet when Neo comes to her, having just had his eyes burned out, and asks to take her ship, the Logos, on a suicide mission directly into the heavily fortified heart of the machine city,
What does she do? She just hands over the keys.
she gives up her only ship.
And when asked why, she tells him it's because she believes in him.
She doesn't say she believes he will win.
She sacrifices her vessel, her own mission, and potentially her own life for a plan that sounds completely and utterly insane.
There is no logical, tactical reason for an experienced commander to give up her most valuable asset based on a gut feeling.
A machine analyzing troop movements would never predict the commander intentionally disarming herself for zero tactical gain.
But she does it anyway. The human element completely overrides the tactical programming.
And then we move to the battle for Zion itself, where we get the incredible sequence with Captain Maysoon and the kid.
This is where the emotional weight of these irrational choices really hits the mud and metal of the real world.
Describe that scene, because visually and emotionally, it perfectly encapsulates this theme.
It is so raw. The dock of Zion is a slaughterhouse. It's dark, the air is thick with smoke and laser fire, and thousands of machine sentinels are just tearing through the human defenses.
Captain Maysoon is operating one of those massive mechanical APU suits.
He is fighting like a demon, but he is overwhelmed. He gets mortally wounded.
He is literally bleeding to death, struggling just to hold Gate 3 open.
And he looks at the kid, this scrawny 16-year-old who lied about his age just to be on the battlefield, and he tells the kid he has to take over the APU.
The kid is absolutely terrified, and rightfully so. He is looking at certain death.
He tells Mifune a logical, undeniable fact. I didn't finish the training program.
He is stating, I am not qualified, I do not have the skills, we are going to fail.
And Mifune, with his dying breath, looks at this terrified teenager and says, neither did I.
Neither did I. It is one of those profoundly human moments in the entire trilogy.
It's a complete rejection of qualifications, of calculated readiness, of rational odds.
Mifune's dying act is to pass the torch based purely on belief.
And the kid, despite his terror, steps into that machine out of pure, selfless devotion to the man who believed in him.
He isn't fighting because he calculates he can win. He is fighting because he refuses to let Mifune's sacrifice mean nothing.
And finally, we absolutely have to talk about Trinity.
She gets on that ship with Neo and flies straight into the Machine City.
She knows it is a one-way trip. The sky is black, lightning is flashing everywhere, and they're flying into a swarm of thousands of sentinels.
Neo, the guy with the superpowers, even turns to her and admits he is scared.
And the essay pulls a beautiful, tiny detail from the film that is so easy to miss.
Trinity responds by describing how it took her 10 entire minutes just to buckle one single boot because her hands were shaking so badly.
Think about the biological reality of that moment. Her body is flooded with adrenaline and cortisol.
Her biological survival instinct, the deepest, most primal programming any living creature has, is screaming at her to run away.
To survive, to preserve her own life. A machine monitoring her biometrics would assume she is about to flee.
But she doesn't. Because 6 hours earlier, she made a promise.
She promised to go with him, to give everything for him.
Every single one of these character choices. Morpheus's blind faith, Niobe giving up her ship, Mifune's last stand, the kid stepping into the APU, and Trinity buckling that boot through the terror.
They all violate rational self-interest. Game theory dictates that they are all making massive, fatal errors.
And that is exactly how the machines perceive it. To the vast algorithms constantly monitoring the situation, these decisions don't look like heroism.
They look like errors in the code.
They look like the probability engine glitching out.
They are failures of logic because, as we establish, the machines built their reality on the assumption that humans will always choose survival over death.
They will choose certainty over risk.
A selfless sacrifice yields zero payoff for the individual making it, so to the Matrix it simply does not compute.
It's like trying to explain the concept of poetry to a pocket calculator.
It just doesn't have the hardware to process it.
And once enough people start making these impossible, invisible, selfless choices, the entire probability matrix starts breaking down.
The variables are behaving in ways that simply shouldn't be mathematically possible.
The machines can no longer predict the future because the future is suddenly being written by irrational love, not calculated survival.
This represents a massive shift in the overarching narrative structure of the films. We are moving away from the illusion of a grand prophecy and moving toward the messy, unpredictable reality of the individual person.
It's the evolution from a calculated, machine-designed rebellion into a genuine movement fueled by unpredictable human sacrifice.
That makes perfect sense for the human resistance, but what about Neo?
Because he isn't just wildly improvising in the machine city, is he?
No. The essay argues that to finalize this break in the system, Neo actually adopts an ancient mythological template to defeat the ultimate virus.
Yes, and this is where we have to unpack the overt Christian symbolism that the Wachowskis layered throughout the trilogy.
Now, it's no secret that it's there. Anyone watching the films can see it.
Neo literally dies in the real world in a cruciform position, with his arms outstretched, golden light radiating from his chest.
Right, and his name before he was unplugged was Thomas Anderson.
The essay breaks this down beautifully. Thomas represents doubting Thomas from the Bible, the disciple who needed physical proof to believe in the resurrection.
And Anderson literally translates from its Greek roots as Son of Man.
So his very name charts his evolution from the doubter into the messianic figure.
He dies in the first film, he resurrects with a kiss of love, he performs literal miracles within the simulated reality. The symbolism is incredibly thick.
But the critical point the essay makes is that this isn't just visual shorthand for the sake of making Neo look cool.
Or a shallow attempt to make the movie feel deep.
It is deeply, fundamentally thematic. Neo's ultimate sacrifice mirrors the Christ narrative in a way that reveals a mechanical truth about how selfless acts can break systemic logic.
But to truly understand how Neo uses this template, we have to look at his opposite. We have to look at his shadow self.
Agent Smith, the guy in the suit and sunglasses who just won't stay dead.
And who suddenly starts multiplying uncontrollably.
Exactly. In Jungian psychology, the shadow self is the dark, unconscious aspect of the personality, the traits we repress or deny.
In the context of The Matrix, the Oracle provides the perfect explanation for what Smith actually is. She tells Neo, he is you, your opposite, your negative, the result of the equation trying to balance itself out.
When Neo chose irrational love, he unbalanced the equation.
The system responded by creating Smith a program of pure, unchecked selfishness to balance it back out.
Smith isn't just a bad guy in a movie. He is sin made manifest.
And I don't just mean that in a religious sense, but in a deeply systemic, mechanical sense.
Systemic sin. That is a fascinating concept. Let's dig into that. What does systemic sin look like in the context of a software program?
It looks like unchecked pathological corruption. Think about what a virus does in a biological system or a computer system.
It has no higher purpose. Its only desire is to consume its host, replicate itself, and turn everything into a copy of itself.
That is Agent Smith. He is pure ego. He represents what happens when the desire for control, self-preservation, and dominance metastasizes until it destroys the entire environment it lives in.
He is the ultimate manifestation of selfishness.
Okay, so if Smith is pure consuming selfishness, how does the Christian mythological template tell us to defeat that?
Because usually in an action movie, you fight the bad guy. But if you fight a virus with more violence, with more power, aren't you just feeding into his logic?
Aren't you just becoming another virus?
Precisely. If we look at the core Christian allegory of redemption, Christ does not defeat sin by assembling an army of zealots and physically fighting the Roman Empire or the manifestation of evil into submission.
He defeats it by absorbing it.
He takes on the sins of humanity. He willingly allows himself to be destroyed by them on the cross. And through that ultimate nonviolent act of taking on the burden, he creates salvation out of what appears to be total, humiliating defeat.
It looks like a massive loss. The Son of God dying on a cross like a common criminal alongside thieves is visually and logically a complete and utter defeat.
The Romans thought they won, but the allegory suggests it's actually the ultimate winning strategy.
And that brings us right to the climax of the entire Matrix trilogy. Neo takes this exact mythological template and applies it to his final confrontation with Smith.
Let's really paint the picture of this final sequence because it is visually overwhelming and philosophically dense.
Neo arrives at the Machine City. He is not leading an armada of hovercrafts. He is not armed with assault rifles.
He stands before the Deus Ex Machina, the literal machine god, this terrifying massive face made of thousands of swarming insect-like machines.
Neo is completely blind, having had his eyes seared by a power cable, and he is entirely defenseless. And what does he ask for?
He doesn't ask for victory. He doesn't demand the destruction of the machines or the surrender of the Matrix. He just asks for peace.
And he offers a deal. Because Smith has grown so powerful, so viral, that he has assimilated almost every program and human mind inside the Matrix.
Smith is about to breach the source and consume the machine city too. The machines, with all their cold logic and firepower, cannot stop him.
The probability engine has failed. So Neo makes a desperate bargain, peace for Zion, in exchange for his help stopping Smith.
And then Neo is plugged into the Matrix for that incredible, torrential final battle.
The visual design here is breathtaking. It's a pouring rain, the code of the world is glitching out, the sky is an oppressive, sickly green and black.
Neo and Smith are clashing in the sky with such kinetic force that their punches are creating literal shockwaves and massive craters in the fabric of the digital city.
But as the fight escalates, we realize something critical. Neo is losing. He is losing badly.
He is getting absolutely pummeled. He's being smashed through buildings, driven to the ground.
But what's fascinating is that Smith, despite clearly winning the physical confrontation, is getting increasingly frustrated.
Because Neo just keeps getting back up. He wipes the blood from his mouth and stands back up in the mud.
And Smith, standing over him, asks the most crucial, defining question in the entire franchise. He asks Neo, "Why do you persist?"
This is where we see Smith's total fundamental confusion.
Remember, Smith is an entity of pure rationality and ego. He cannot comprehend an action without a selfish, calculated motivation.
He starts frantically listing all the reasons a human might fight. Is it for freedom? For truth? Perhaps for peace? Or could it be for love?
And he dismisses every single one of them as illusions. He screams that they are the vagaries of perception, temporary constructs of a feeble human intellect, trying desperately to justify an existence that is entirely without meaning or purpose.
Smith is basically saying, I have analyzed the math of your entire reality. There is zero logical reason for you to keep taking this beating.
You cannot win. Surviving for another 5 minutes has no positive payoff. Why are you doing this?
Because Smith is pure will to power, he literally cannot fathom making a choice without a selfish, beneficial reason behind it.
And Neo, broken and exhausted, gives him an answer that is so incredibly simple it destroys Smith's entire worldview.
Neo says, because I choose to.
Because I choose to. It's an answer that completely short-circuits Smith's programming.
Neo isn't fighting because he delusionally thinks he can physically win. He's not fighting to achieve a specific tactical outcome.
He's fighting simply to exercise his free will to resist corruption. It is choice, stripped of all rational justification, utility, or expected reward.
And then, having made that point, Neo implements his ultimate strategy. He stops fighting.
He just stops. He stands there in the rain and he lets it happen.
He lets Smith plunge his hand into his chest. He allows the black coat of the virus to cover his body, transforming him into just another Smith clone among millions.
Because Neo realizes in that moment that the Oracle's vision was right. He can't beat Smith by punching him harder.
If you fight a mirror, you just get cut. So he offers his life for mutual benefit.
He allows his own digital avatar to become a conduit by letting Smith infect him inside the Matrix, while his physical body in the real world is directly plugged into the source in the machine city.
Neo gives the machines the direct connection they need.
The machines use Neo's physical body as a bridge. They pump a massive deletion command, a surge of pure energy, straight through Neo and into the heart of the Smith virus,
Shattering every single clone across the entire Matrix in an explosion of white light.
Neo sacrifices his own life to balance the equation. He absorbs the sin of the system to destroy it.
And what are Smith's final, desperate words as he starts to crack and dissolve? He screams, "It's not fair."
That's not fair. Those 3 words are so telling about the nature of power and control.
Because in Smith's mind, he followed all the rules of the game. He played the game of combat, dominance, and power perfectly.
He assimilated the most minds. He accumulated the most strength. By every metric of game theory, he was the undisputed victor. The math said he won.
But Neo wasn't playing that game anymore.
Neo didn't just play a better game. He flipped the board over entirely.
The essay asks us to really visualize the physical toll of this moment. Neo is in the real world, his body broken, impaled by rebar, laying exactly where the Oracle foresaw he would be.
Visually, physically, he is completely destroyed.
But as Trinity's earlier thesis echoes through the narrative, Neo didn't win by fighting harder, being stronger, or dominating his enemy.
He won by giving everything away.
The machines, operating on pure logic, recognize that Neo's sacrifice is the only path that doesn't result in mutual destruction.
It is an act of pure altruism that solves an otherwise unsolvable equation. Neo chooses to lose the physical battle in order to win the metaphysical peace.
So we've talked a lot about programs, matrices, and messiahs, but how does this apply to us? Let's take a breath here and step completely out of the matrix for a second.
Yeah, let's bring it back to the real world.
If you are listening to this right now, driving to work or doing the dishes, you might be wondering, what does this mean for you and me living out here in the real world?
Because the Wachowskis didn't just make a cool sci-fi movie with great wire fu, they made a mirror.
Absolutely. The video essay heavily emphasizes that the Matrix is a profound, direct allegory for the real-world systems of control that we all navigate every single day.
We don't have literal robot squids hunting our hovercrafts, but we live inside matrices of our own making.
Think about the structures of our modern lives. Think about massive corporate structures that demand we sacrifice our entire lives, our youth, our time with our families, our physical health, just to increase a profit margin for shareholders we will never meet.
Think about political machines that take our genuine, burning desire for social change and turn it into a perpetual, cyclical fundraising loop.
Where nothing actually gets fixed, but the campaign coffers stay full.
These are modern matrices. They are systems designed to predict, control, and monetize human behavior.
And perhaps the most insidious modern example the essay touches on is social media algorithms.
These algorithms literally commodify our anger, our attention, and our outrage.
They map our psychological reactions, figure out what makes us angry, and feed us more of it to keep us scrolling.
Turning our genuine emotional distress into data points to sell targeted advertisements.
It is the architect's probability engine made real. You think you're rebelling by posting a furious rant about an injustice? But the algorithm doesn't care about your morals.
It just sees engagement metrics. It sees time on site. It absorbs your rebellion and uses it to sell more ads.
It's exactly like buying a mass-produced Eat the Rich t-shirt on a corporate credit card from a multinational conglomerate. The system doesn't care that you hate it as long as you're buying the merchandise.
The system feeds on opposition. But if we look back at the history of human civilization, it is full of massive empires that operated exactly like the machines in the film.
They relied on the same predictable logic of dominance, violence, and self-interest.
But the essay provides incredible historical evidence of how real flesh-and-blood figures broke these empires using what we might call the neo-strategy.
Yes, this is where the historical context just blew my mind. Let's look at real history through this lens, based strictly on how the essay frames systemic control. Let's talk about Mahatma Gandhi.
Gandhi faced down the entire British Empire, one of the most powerful, rational, militarily advanced systems of control in human history.
And he didn't do it by building a bigger army or acquiring superior firepower. Logically, tactically, the Indian people couldn't possibly win a violent war against the British military machine.
So he did something the empire's probability engine couldn't calculate. Think about the Salt March.
The British imposed a tax on salt, a basic human necessity.
A rational game theory rebellion would have been to violently attack the tax collectors or bomb a facility.
The British had thick strategy playbooks for exactly how to crush armed rebellions. They knew how to fight force with greater force. That was their language.
But Gandhi just walked to the sea to make his own salt.
He met their immense structured violence with absolute nonviolence. When his followers were beaten by police, they accepted the suffering without raising a hand in retaliation.
They took the hits. They filled the jails until the system literally couldn't function.
The British had zero playbook for a population that simply refused to fight back on their terms, yet refused to comply.
By stepping completely outside the logic of violence, Gandhi made the empire's brutality look monstrous on the global stage. He didn't try to outpunch them. He rendered their punches totally irrelevant.
The essay also brings up the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. Here is a man who was born a prince. He had immense wealth, a kingdom, absolute power, luxury.
Everything that a rational game theory-driven society tells us we should strive to accumulate and fiercely protect.
The system says get more, hoard it, defend it. What did he do?
He walked away from all of it. He took off his jewels, put on a simple robe, and went to sit under a tree to meditate.
He proved the ultimate glitch in the psychological matrix of desire. If you truly want nothing, the system has absolutely no leverage over you.
The system controls you by threatening to take away what you love or promising to give you what you crave.
You cannot be controlled, you cannot be manipulated if you have nothing to lose and nothing you are trying to gain. It completely breaks the math of human manipulation.
And then, jumping forward in history, there is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. facing down the horrific, deeply entrenched systemic oppression of segregation in the American South.
Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement faced unimaginable systemic violence. Look at Project C in Birmingham. They faced police dogs, high-pressure fire hoses, bombings, and assassins.
And Dr. King met that terrifying institutional violence with organized marches, sit-ins, and speeches about radical love, brotherhood, and nonviolent resistance.
The segregationist system was a machine built entirely to handle and administer violence. If the movement had fought back with guns, the system would have just deployed the National Guard.
It would have made mathematical sense to them. It would have justified their oppression.
But the system could not handle a group of people who kept showing up in their Sunday best, kept taking the hits, kept sacrificing their own physical safety, and absolutely refused to hate their oppressors back.
They willingly absorbed the violence of the system, just like Neo absorbed Smith.
And by doing so, they forced the hidden barbaric violence of the system out into the light of television screens across the world, because the oppressed utterly refused to become part of the system's violent logic.
This is the core lesson the essay is hammering home. You cannot out-rational a rational system. You cannot beat the machine at its own game.
That is the profound central takeaway. If you try to fight an empire on its own terms, trading violence for violence, power for power, anger for anger, outrage for outrage, you just become another predictable variable in its equation.
You become part of its logic. The essay uses this incredibly powerful phrasing that perfectly encapsulates this trap.
I have that exact quote written down right here because it genuinely gave me chills when I heard it.
Go for it.
The essay states, You can rebel, but your rebellion will be merchandised. You can resist, but your resistance becomes content. The system doesn't fear opposition, it feeds on it.
Your resistance becomes content. That is a terrifyingly accurate diagnosis of the modern age.
If you spend your day arguing with strangers on the internet about systemic injustice, you might feel like you are fighting the power.
But the algorithm that owns that platform doesn't care about your morals or your righteous anger. It only cares that you spent 4 hours on their app, generating data and viewing advertisements.
The system effortlessly absorbs your rebellion and uses it to generate revenue. The only way to truly break the cycle is to completely step outside of it through radical, irrational acts of selflessness, unplugging from the expectation of reward.
It's a total paradigm shift. It completely upends how we view power, success, and resistance in our own lives.
Which brings us beautifully back to the films, to the final resolution of the movie, and the ultimate takeaway of our conversation today. Because the movie doesn't end with Neo's death. There is an aftermath.
And the aftermath of Neo's choice is unlike any typical blockbuster ending. We see Sati, the little program girl from the train station.
The one whose parents loved her enough to smuggle her out of the deletion queue.
She is standing in the newly rebooted Matrix, and she has created this stunningly beautiful, vibrant orange and pink sunrise.
The green tint, the sickly, oppressive, calculating code color that dominated the Matrix for 3 films is gone.
And down in the real world, the kid is running through the battered, smoking, mud-filled ruins of Zion.
He is screaming at the top of his lungs that the war is over. Not that they won the war. Not that they killed all the machines and stood victorious on a pile of scrap metal.
Just that it's over. The killing has finally stopped.
We then get that final, profoundly ambiguous and remarkably quiet conversation between the Oracle and the architect.
They are sitting on a park bench in this newly painted world. The architect, who still represents pure, unyielding logic, asks her a cynical question. Just how long do you think this piece is going to last?
And the Oracle, who has always represented belief, human intuition, and faith, replies with total honesty. As long as it can.
It's not a fairy tale, happily ever after guarantee. It doesn't promise that humans will never fight machines again.
Because human nature and machine logic still exist. The peace may be extremely fragile, it might be temporary.
But the eternal, calculated cycle of domination and rebellion, the probability engine that trapped them all for centuries, has been broken, at least for now, because one person chose selflessness over ego.
The machines, true to their new agreement, allow any human mind that wants to leave the Matrix to go free.
They compromised because Neo showed them a path that didn't end in a zero-sum game of mutual destruction.
So to summarize this massive journey for you, the listener, the ending of the Matrix isn't confusing at all. It is perfectly, intricately by design.
Neo doesn't defeat the machines. He makes defeating them completely unnecessary.
He proves that the most powerful, disruptive thing you can possibly do in a world obsessed with winning isn't to dominate your opponent. It is to step outside the game entirely.
It challenges us to deeply examine our own lives. We have to ask ourselves, where are we playing the game of dominance?
Where are we trapped in a cycle of calculated self-interest, convinced that if we just fight a little harder, argue a little louder, or acquire a little more, we'll finally win a game that was mathematically rigged against us from the very start?
Which leaves us with one final, deeply provocative thought for you to mull over today. Something that builds directly on the themes of the essay, but takes it a step further into our daily reality.
We talked at length about Neo's literal blindness in the final act of the film.
It is a perfect metaphor because, without his physical eyes, he can no longer see the green, calculating code of the Matrix.
He can't see the strategies, the probabilities, or the systemic outcomes anymore.
He can only see with his spirit. He can only see love, faith, and the golden light of purpose.
It makes you wonder. In our own modern matrices, where we are constantly surrounded by endless, hyper-calculated social media feeds, algorithmic echo chambers, and systems that constantly dictate what we should see, fear, and desire.
Do we need to intentionally blind ourselves to those calculated probabilities in order to make a truly free, selfless choice?
Do we need to intentionally log off, tune out the metrics, ignore the engagement algorithms, and intentionally blind ourselves to the machine's probabilities just to remember how to be genuinely human?
That is a thought that is going to stick with me for a long, long time.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope this conversation encourages you to view the complex systems around you and the quiet power of your own daily choices through an entirely new, incredibly powerful lens. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.